Alright, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, going through a series of video presentations based on the PowerPoint slides for Murox HTML5 and CSS3 4th edition. These books, or this book and the Murox JavaScript and jQuery 3rd edition book, are used for the Rankin Technical College AWD Application and Web Development 1000. AWD1000 Web Development Technologies class. So far, I've gone over Chapter 1, Introduction to Web Development, Chapter 2, How to Code, Test, and Validate a Web Page, Chapter 3, How to Use HTML to Structure a Web Page, and now I just finished How to Use Chapter 4, How to Use CSS to Format the Elements of a Web Page, which puts us into Chapter 5. Again, Chapters 4, 5, and 6 are all CSS-centric. So let's go ahead and start on that. And what is discussed in this chapter is what is referred to as the CSS Box Model. All right? So CSS Box Model, I'll just grab it in W3 Schools. A little hard to understand when you first see it, but it really shouldn't be. So if I create, for example, an H1 tag, okay? So if I create, in fact, I'm going to do this. I'm going to create an H1 tag, and in this H1 tag, I'm going to change the content, then the padding, then the border, then the margin, so you can see what happens in this. All right? Now, to do this, I'm going to put it inside of what's called a div. All right, a division container, so you can see everything that's happening here. So I'm going to go back to what we've been building. This was that Murox thing. All right, here we had that paragraph that said, "We love San Joaquin, California." And that's the one I'm just going to play with. All right? I'm only doing that just so I've got some room here. So here's the beginning div tag. And in that div tag, this is how I usually format things. You don't have to do this. It doesn't work any better when you do what I'm showing you right now. But to me, it makes it easier to read. All right, a lot of people think my documents are way too long because I do a lot of this. All right. I don't know, did I take that P? Nope, I didn't. Okay. So here's my div. All right. And I'm going to come in here, and what I'm going to say for this div, you'll understand hopefully in just a minute what I'm doing here. So what I'm going to say is, for this div that I'm working on right now, all right, I want the div to be width of, I don't know, I'm going to say 16M, which is almost 200 pixels, a height of the same. So 16M, I'm not sure why width isn't highlighted there. All right, and I'm going to put in here for the color, we'll just make it white, and for the background, we'll make it, I think dark blue is a color. We'll find out. All right, so let's see what that looks like. Might look terrible, and if it does, we'll have to fix it. All right, so you can see it's way too big, but you can see what we've done here. All right, so my height is too high. Let's make it about 6M. That looks a little better. All right, so this is our content right here. That's our content. So the first thing I'm going to show you here, I showed you the content. And if we look back in here, our content, after our content comes our padding. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to add padding. And I'm going to make it 20 pixels. 2 M's. All right, you saw what this looked like. So let's see now what it looks like. All right. And it's like, well, I really did kind of screw it up, to be honest with you. All right, so let's just make it 1M. In fact, let's make it 0.5M. trying to make this so you can see it and hopefully get something out of it. All right. So now I've added some padding in here. All right. After the padding, I want to come in and what comes next. So what you can see, hopefully, and because I'm kind of balling this up, is the content gets surrounded by the padding. Then we've got a border. So let's put a border on here. Put a border on our div. We'll make it go all the way around. Let's make it 3 pixels, solid, and let's just make it white so it should stand out, hopefully. And you can see that it's around here. I'm not sure. I goofed something up. All right. I think this is. It's actually 2 different divs now because I screwed something up. All right. But hopefully, at least, you're getting the idea. Let's get rid of this width. Maybe that's goofing it up. I don't even know. Oh, now the height went. Why is it doing that? Ah, that was the problem. Sorry about that. All right. Well, now it's not big enough with 2 M's, so we'll make the width, I don't know, 5M and the height 3M. All right, there it is. Okay, it's still not big enough, but you're getting, hopefully, the idea. Let's make them both 8. All right. Again, I'm not sure I'm getting 2 of them. It's probably something real simple, and that's why I don't know what it is. But what I'm trying to show you is this. All right. We had our content, which was our paragraph. Around our content, we put padding. Padding is the distance between the content and its border, whether the border is there or not. Then we put in a border. Now we're going to add some margin on the end here. Hopefully what you have been able to garner out of this is when I make changes, how stuff is moving around on the screen. All right, that to me is the most important thing for you to understand. All right, so let's see, what did we have here? Div, paragraph is in the div. I'm going to grab this paragraph here, and I'm going to copy it down here a few times. All right, because hopefully by doing that, you're really able to start to see. Okay, see that? All right, so we've got the we love. That's the problem here, this we love. Ah, I never ended my div. That's what the problem is. There you go. Okay, so content is surrounded by padding. Padding is surrounded by border. Border is surrounded by margin. Okay, I apologize for that. I don't know how the heck I goofed that up so badly. But we can go back now and make this a little more reasonable looking, probably. All right, so we can go back in here where we had our div. There was our height and our width, our color. It might have made sense to say something like text, align, center. All right, why? You'll see why. See how it's centered now? All right, so there's all sorts of different things that you can do with this box model. But again, it says every element that you create in CSS, I should say every element that's an HTML element, anything on a web page, is in one of these boxes. The boxes, of course, are invisible. if you want to see more and maybe even a better example than what I just showed you, I'm going to go back here, and with our div showing, all right, I'm going to hit F12 again to bring up our developer tools. Okay, I'm going to click in this box. Okay, I want to be in here. So inside of main, someplace, there's the div. All right, so I want to be in my div. And now when we look in here, we can move this up and make it bigger if we want. You can see all the things that have been set. See that? What's kind of neat too is you can even turn them off if you want by clicking those checks. All right, but if we go from elements to, what is it? Is it computed? There's our box model. So we've got our content surrounded by our padding, which looks like it's 8 units all the way around, surrounded by our border, which is 3 units all the way around, surrounded by our margin. And look at this. It's even color coded for us. So notice what happens here when I put my mouse in the content. You can see that. Then padding, you can see that. Then border, kind of hard, but you can sort of see that. And then margin. So you can really start to understand, hopefully, the breadth and depth of coverage in this stuff as you start taking a look at it. All right, so that was Chapter 4 that we just finished. And now we're into Chapter 5. And Chapter 5, again, another CSS chapter, is on the box model. Now, what I hope to be able to do is go through this a little quicker because of what I just showed you. All right, so this is all about the box model. This is the author's rendition of the box model. It is pretty much what I showed you. All right, the picture is a little different, but again, the ideas that you see in here are pretty much the same. The author is showing you in here where the content is, okay, where the margin top is, the margin left, the margin right, the margin bottom, and same thing with padding. There's kind of a neat thing I used to show people, and they've moved it, so I'm not sure where it is. So let's see if it's still there. There used to be a company or a thing called Red Melon, and they put out a picture of the CSS box model. And why am I showing you this? Hopefully when you look at it in a second, if I can find it, you'll see why. Well, it was a 3D picture. Well, of course, can't find it right here now, but okay. This did make me think of something, and that is kind of the quintessential resource for anything CSS. There is a publication. Oh, it's a website called css-tricks.com. And may not be much to look at, but it's a really good site. As it says, they've got code snippets that allow you to do all sorts of stuff. Just to show you that quickly, time's already getting away from me here. Right. So again, if you have an interest, https://css-tricks.com, all you need to type in is this, css-tricks.com. All right, going back then. When you are working with boxes, they give you some formulas in here. Remember that when you add padding to an element, when you add margin to an element, etc., the element gets bigger, it gets wider, or it gets taller. All right, depending on whether you're using bottom, left, bottom, right, top, right, left, or bottom type of margins, padding, etc. All right, so here's a page that uses the box model. Notice what they've done here. You could make your own determination, say, well, that's really ugly. This is meant to be a teaching page. This isn't something you'd ever put out there for production. All right, so they come in and set widths and heights. Notice that you can set max width and max height. We will do some of that when we start to build our own website later. You don't have to set margin for everything. You don't have to set top, right, bottom, and left. And notice it's like a clock. Top is 12 o'clock, right is 3 o'clock, bottom is 6 o'clock, and left is 9 o'clock. That's typically the way that you do it. All right, is like a clock. But if I do this, and I just put one number in, that sets 1M for top, right, bottom, and left. If I set just two of them, the first number goes to the top and bottom, the second number goes to the right and left. If I do three of them, then this one goes to the top, this one goes to the right and the left, and that goes to the bottom. Or I can do all four where they can all be different. All right? So again, whether it's margin or padding, they work the same way. But remember, padding is what surrounds the element. All right? And so you've got your contents, your elements, then padding, then border, then margin. All right? And again, until you really see this stuff in action, and I've just been giving you, for lack of better words, a preview, it's probably not going to make a whole boatload of sense. So here's a page where they've set up widths, margins, and padding. All right? And you'll notice if you look here, they also came in then and set up a reset selector. This is the simplest reset selector I can think of. This says when you start, take the whole document and set margins and padding, margin and padding to 0. All right? So we've talked about margins a little bit. We've talked about padding a little bit. You've seen borders. All right? When you set up a border, you can set up a border to go all the way around something, or just a top border, or just a bottom border, or just a left border, or just a right border. Borders have different styles, different widths, different colors, etc. You can set it up as different lines, or you can combine it into just one, which is typically the way you do it. The order in which you put these elements does not matter. All right? So this would be a top border only, 2 pixels, solid and black. This would be a right border only, 4 pixels, double, which means I think it's a double line, and it would be blue. All right? So you can set widths on all this stuff too. You can set colors on all this stuff. You can also, and this is important because I believe this is a CSS3 or a fairly recent advent, and that is that you can set radius to round corners and shadows. All right? So you'll notice they put some CSS in here to do some of that. And notice rounded corner, rounded corner, rounded corner, non-rounded corner. Again, typically the reason you do this stuff would just be for effect. All right? All right, when you set background, you can either say background or background hyphen color. Many people, especially when they're first starting, use both. Remember, if you leave off the word background and just say color, that's the color of your text or your foreground. This is for the color of the background. Instead of a color, you can put an image. By default, when you create an image, it'll keep repeating on the page for as much room as you give it. But you can set it to no repeat, where it's only there once. You can set it to repeat X, where it'll only go on the X border. Repeat Y, where it'll only go on the Y border. All right, or repeat, which will repeat on both. You can set up attachments. Maybe your company has got some kind of a watermark or something that they put on their documents. You can also position things for the background. Again, this won't make a boatload of sense until you see it in action. So here's setting the background to a color. Here is setting the background to an image, and it says if the image doesn't take up the screen, fill the rest with color. Same kind of thing. And here you're repeating it on the y-axis. All right? So there's a lot of different stuff here that you can set up. Okay, the accessibility guideline here says don't use a background color or an image that makes the text that's over it difficult to read. Again, keep a variation between your text and the background that text goes on. In an ideal world, all right, dark text on a light background. You can work with gradients, and if you've never seen gradients before, they're pretty much a CSS3 thing, all right? And when you use gradients, the idea is you can have colors kind of go, there's some gradients. All right, you can see how that's going here, how that's going here. You can have them go in a horizontal direction, in a vertical direction. It's almost limitless what you can do. Now you'll notice here that it says minus WebKit minus linear. Not all browsers support gradients in the same way. Pretty much they do today. In fact, nice website out here, and it's called caniuse.com. Can I use? So I come out here and I say gradients. And you'll notice it's got different colors in here. When something is in red, it means it's not supported. So for instance, it looks like Opera Mini doesn't support this at all. Safari earlier versions don't support this. Opera earlier versions, etc. All right, when it's green, that usually means total support, and I believe when it's semi-green, it's partial support. But caniuse, one word, .com, a way you can check on this stuff. So here's a web page as we finish up the chapter that's got borders. All right, and the background behind that has got a gradient. It's going from white to kind of a lighter brown or whatever you'd call that. They give you the CSS, all right, and they show you how you can apply it. So that's pretty much it. I realize some of these have been kind of quick, all right, but the idea is to just go over the PowerPoints and at least on occasion to come in here and show you some examples. All I can do is promise you this, and that is we are going to be doing so much more when we're actually creating the website itself. All right, I think that's going to be maybe your moment where a lot of it really starts to come together. All right, so when I come back, I guess I brought up the wrong one. I'm going to bring up Chapter 6 here, which will be the last in the series of 3 straight chapters on CSS. All right, so I will come back and go over Chapter 6 with you in just a couple minutes.